Jo, tady takový ten...
Víš, jak taková ty?
Ne, tady byla taková ta blbost, o kterou si vždycky někdo rozsekne.
Já jsem se tady jsem se už do toho nebloknul.
Jo, no, to nebylo. Koukám právě.
Ty dětské patičky.
Co to, že se křižá, nekoukáš se přes hnout?
No, mám to blízko a mám na recepci balíček, takže...
Jo, takže hlavně ten balíček.
Ale hlavně ten balíček, teda hlavně ten Docker, teda.
Je tak mimochodem.
Listen? So, when I joined CN, we started project where we had hard requirement to have everything in Docker containers, and we had a team with all systems, and I was running Windows and Linux inside VirtualBox. My colleague was on Linux directly, and some colleagues have been using Mac. And we started the project, and we really quickly found that there is big performance issue with Docker for Mac. Then after small research, it was pretty clear, because in PHP or JavaScript world, we have really many small files, and we found these times, for example. So it was really painful on Mac. For example, here are times for the Drupal installation, which are multiple commands in terminal. And what we found was that the problem is not in hardware in Mac, because when we run, for example, VirtualBox on Mac, it was totally okay. So the problem was about Docker for Mac. Later, I found some simple PHP benchmark, and it had two main sections. One was about CPU and calculations, and the second was about file system. And we found that there is almost no problem about CPU on Mac, but there was a really huge problem with I/O. So I started some research, and I tried to find what the hell is going on. Here you can see two rows in table with Docker for Mac, but there is a really just small difference between them in settings, but there is a huge drop in performance. And later I found this is about volumes. If you do not use shared volume, everything works fine. But so you may ask, why to use shared volumes? That's easy. If you do not use shared volume, you don't see files on your host system. So you are not able to develop anything. This is why you have to use shared volumes. So files which you can see on host machine are at the same time in the container. So that was not funny. I tried to separate these two things, to use shared volume for our custom code and use anonymous volume, for example, for vendor or for JavaScript for node modules directory. That was okay, but the problem is that you are not able to inspect any third-party code. I was searching maybe for several days in totally. I was searching in issues on GitHub. There are 61 issues about performance of Docker for Mac, and I created also one. I put there these benchmark results and things like that, but I had typical advice from the team of Docker for Mac. Everything is okay. We are making on improvements. We changed QCow to raw volume for that big file where they store all files used in volumes, which is different to Linux, because on Linux they have overlay to file system, and those files from volumes are directly visible on file system of host machine. So I tried some of them. All of them are based on Unison, which is something which can maybe be compared to rsync or something like that. But it has to use iNotify to be notified of files changes. So if you change something in your editor, file system has to talk to something that file has been changed, and this is monitoring all these files. Yeah, with this, we had files directly in container. We had another set of same files on our host machine. So the performance issue about I/O has been fixed. But it was not better. It was much worse because we had huge CPU usage, and it was because we had about 40,000 files in vendor, and also almost same was for Node.js part of our project, which had also about 40,000 files, and this was bottleneck for iNotify. That was totally out of its original scope. So this was not a good way. Not only because of numbers, but also my Mac was constantly hot and using CPU for maximum. But how often do we change files in vendor or node modules? How often we update third-party libraries? I think it's not several times per day, for example. So at the end, I went to custom script for manual syncing between my host machine and anonymous volume in Docker container. We sync only the vendor, which is the common problem. because we have there about 40,000 files, but we have only, let's say, hundreds of files in our custom code. And I think this is typical situation in both PHP and JavaScript, that your code is minimum part of the whole project. So the only change was in Docker Compose file. Initially, we had only one volume for the whole project. It was visible in Docker container, and so we added and the shared volumes. Shared volume means here we specify directory on our host machine, which means current directory, and we map it into the directory inside container. We also found some advices to try some flags, for example, delegated or cached, which have better behavior than default, but it was not something to really help us. So we just added second volume to Docker container. It contains all third-party code, and we also have really short script, but there was a little complication, as Docker Compose do not know exactly all Docker commands. Docker Compose knows, let's say, exec, logs, and things like that, but copy was not that. So there is small let's say script to give result the name of container from Docker Compose, which is useful because you do not have to know exact name of Docker container, because Docker Compose creates it with some numbers and things like that. So this is solution, and now the only change in our workflow is that after Composer update, we have to run this just once to have a new third-party code in our host machine, so we can find in that code if we need. And with this, we are almost on same numbers like Linux machines or servers or something like that. The only difference was in file system. And now, as MacBook disks are really good, we are on the same numbers like installation on our continuous integration servers and things like that. So this is just a small tip, but it can help you to increase your efficiency, because we already had problems with reinstalling of project, with any updates and things like that. So if you do not have any better solution, use anonymous volume for vendor or node modules. So that's it. And now we can discuss if you found the same issue, if you have any other advice how to fix it, because it's really boring to wait for page load for 30 seconds instead 1 second and things like that.
Can you change the storage driver on macOS, or is it fixed?
This is something which has not been fixed when I tried to find it, but the main problem is that Docker for Mac use a RAW file as a storage for all files in volumes. It's not populated directly to.
Yeah, but for example, on Linux, you can say, I want to store volumes in files, I want to store them in directories, I want this partition to be Docker only, and Docker do whatever you want with this partition. So you have different options. Do you have these options on Mac or not?
In times when I was researching this, it was not possible. Maybe things changed a little bit. For example, Docker team switched from QCOW files file format to RAW, but really I found thousands of issues or questions on Stack Overflow and things like that about slow PHP or JavaScript on Docker on other than Linux environment. And I think that this problem is really only about different file system subsystem of Docker on non-Linux environments. And the same was on the Windows, which I do not use, but we tried, and this was exactly the same problem. So yeah, any questions or tips?
Do not update to the newest OS X version on Mac.
Do not do that.
Because then the Docker is slower.
Yeah, that's definitely it's not related to this. It's even worse. Yeah, new macOS is not fixed now with Docker. Martin, colleague, he tried also complete wipe of all data, complete reinstallation of Docker. He tried Edge and stable. He also tried some older version, and everything is bad now. But let's hope it will be fixed as soon as possible.
What's the stable Docker version on Mac currently, or recommended to use? Because I ran into some problems, but they were related to some Docker changes in regards to those daemon names or something like that. It was between 17.x and 18.x.
Yeah, I'm using
1809.
I'm
Okay,
using
no,
Edge, but
yeah, it's latest. So, yeah.
yeah, generally we have great experience with using Docker for everything in our development, but this was a hard thing, and it was not there was not good efficiency in some cases when you needed, for example, migrations or some, let's say, continuous integration steps, which had big performance requirements. So it was bad.
Michal is saying that he thinks that there was change in Docker version numbering in last days.
Yeah, as now here we see number 2,
But the
and engine has different numbering. Just one thing that I didn't even tried was Docker machine, because I have read about problems with, let's say, Xdebug and things like that, because it uses a VirtualBox machine, and there is more complicated network layer.
And what is that? That Docker machine, some other client?
Yeah, that's different Docker client for Mac. You need to use VirtualBox. They have some minimal ISO image of the Linux system, and it uses this running VirtualBox machine to, let's say, translate those commands and things like that. And it's a little bit complicated because of IPs and things like that.
Okay. So that's all. We will end the stream.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.